Hey, it's Patrick from J&P Cycles, and I am super stoked because we've got to spend the last couple days riding Indian's highly anticipated FTR1200. Specifically, the one we have here is the S model. The difference between that and the standard model would be race-inspired paint scheme, adjustable suspension, Akrapovic mufflers, and this hot rod 4.5-inch dash here with all kinds of electronics packed into it, we'll get to in a minute. But most importantly, what I like to judge a bike on is fun factor, and this thing kind of hit it out of the park. From the spec sheet, I really didn't know what to make of it. I knew I wanted to ride it, but is it a scrambler? Is it a street fighter? Didn't kind of know. And it looked a bit on the heavy side to me on the spec sheet, but with decent power. Once I got on the bike, my opinions all kind of changed a little bit. And it does a ton of things well. We took it off-road, obviously hit some very, very technical twisty roads up here in the Black Hills, and the bike really performed well. But let's start off with ergonomics. I'm 5'6". The seat height on this is a hair over 33 inches. I was definitely up on my tippy toes, but it didn't really bother me at all. Handlebars, Pro Taper bars right out of the box. Really like the feel of it. Off the bike seems kind of big. At the 518 pounds it weighs in at full of fuel, it seems kind of big. When you get on it, it kind of narrows up. I like the upright riding position, and the seat's actually pretty nice. And what I like is it narrows up. It allowed me to slide way forward on it, and it seemed really close to me like I like. When you're riding aggressively, you can slide forward, you can grab a hold of that tank with your knees, and it feels great. When you're just cruising around, you can kind of slide back a little bit and relax. I rode this bike, for a couple of solid days, for all day on one day, and had no real ergonomic issues whatsoever. Really like the feel of the bike. The only negative in ergonomics is I like what they tried to do with the foot peg, but the foot peg could be sharper. It's a little bit slick. But let's go ahead and jump on into how it handled. Like I said, this one has the adjustable suspension on it. I stiffened it up just a tad, but on paved roads, this thing turned into corners very easily. Like I said, it's 60 inches. It's a little bit longer than maybe some of its competitors, although I'm not quite sure what those competitors would be. But man, it turns in real easy and exits like an animal. I was really happy with how the bike handled. It's smooth and sneaky fast. Before I knew it, I was going a lot faster than I thought through the canyons. I wasn't even pushing at all and carrying tons of corner speed. We decided to go ahead and take it off-road. Not only did we hit gravel roads, but we hit some fairly serious off-road stuff. We took it up on some fire roads and some UTV trails, and I tell you what, it did great. The Dunlop tires, they're a little bit different. They're a flat track inspired tire. It looks just like a flat track tire, but it's obviously a DOT spec tire. It did great in the canyons. Grip was not a problem. Actually, in the dirt, they handled around pretty well too. But I will say there is a negative to these tires. If you have any kind of groove pavement where you're at, they follow that groove pavement. They feel like it wants to walk around on you a little bit. Doesn't actually do anything, but it will get your attention, the tires on the groove pavement. Suspension was good, had no issues there. How the bike handled in the twisties, like I said, we had some really technical roads. We hit Iron Mountain Road, we hit Needles, the canyons around us. They're no joke, and the bike, like I said, is sneaky fast. Turns in no problem. Gets out of the corner really good and sounds awesome doing it. We'll get to that too. We jumped in town, commuted around a little bit, even hit the highway. I was a little bit concerned about wind blast on the highway, and it simply wasn't an issue. Some of the other more street fighter bikes I've ridden, you get above 70, 75, and they kind of want to suck you off the back. This wasn't the case. I don't know if it's this little cowling here or how you're positioned on the bike, but 75, 80 miles an hour on the highway here, I was perfectly comfortable. No real arm strain at all. Brakes on this bike are spectacular. Brembo's backed up by Brembo radial mount master cylinder up here. Man, they're good. The other thing is this particular bike is equipped with ABS. Part of the electronics package here, traction control and ABS. ABS works very well. A lot of the bikes, you can hear kind of like that clack, or you can feel the pulsing. None of that with this. I rode with it on, rode with it off. Brakes are fantastic on this bike. Now, let's get to what everybody wants to talk about. The engine. I claimed 120 horse with the crank. I was kind of maybe expecting a little bit more, but I can tell you the bike feels fast. Extremely linear power band. I was cruising around in town and even on the highway at about 4,500 RPM. That was kind of the cruising RPM. Not to say the bike's a dog below that. It's just fine below that, but it just kind of felt like I was lugging it if I dropped below that. Hit that $6,000 mark and this thing really starts making bacon. In fact, you can audibly hear it change. When you say you're at 45 and you whack this thing open, it sweeps up, hits 5 grand, right past 5 grand, it really kind of rockets off. After it hits that peak torque number, it starts making power. And you can hear it change. You can hear the tone of the engine really start to scream, and it has a red line of like 9 grand, which is a ton for a twin and plenty for this. So when I was riding really aggressively in the twisty roads, I was keeping it kind of around 775, and man, the RPMs, they fly up. Some of the electronics. Really interesting dash on this thing. Has a USB port, you can plug your phone into it, and you can actually operate your phone through the dash. So if you have Bluetooth speakers in your helmet, you can cycle through your music and whatnot right here on the dash. You don't have to fumble with the phone. It also has selectable gauge pods. So you can switch your look of your gauges. You can do that through the controls. You can do it via touchscreen, which works with your gloves, no problem, or you can do it via the buttons on the bars. You can cycle through the gauges up here. You can get into some of the options through the bar buttons. Now, it has 3 selectable ride modes: rain, standard, and track mode. Where I felt the most difference in those modes was on the bottom half of the RPM range. The rain mode obviously is super, super soft and doggy and sluggish, to take care of any traction problems you have in slick conditions. And standard mode is pretty snappy, and track mode, of course, is wide open. The other thing it has is you can turn traction control and ABS off. Now, they are linked. You can't choose one or the other. I had to choose what I wanted them off or on. Like I said, the ABS is really, really good. I've ridden a bunch of bikes with ABS. Sometimes some of those bikes aren't that great. This is good. The traction control had me in a bit of a quandary because this thing will still spin the tire up really, really quick, no problem. So it was very, very subtle, which I liked. I'm not a huge fan of traction control, and being that this is a bike that was derived off Indian's wildly successful FTR1200 flat track professional race bike, you kind of want to be able to step this thing out and spin the rear, and it does that. Huge fun factor here. Like I said, I kept trying to kind of put this bike in a box, and I don't know what you would compare it with. Possibly that Triumph Scrambler out there, but very capable off-road. It's not an adventure tourer for sure, but it's also not a purebred street fighter. So Indian kind of carved a little niche for itself here in this flat track bike for the street. And man, I gotta say, I love it. It allows you to do everything. If you're going down the road, you see a trail, bam, hit it, gravel road. It loves it. In fact, some of the tamer off-road trails or gravel roads were some of the funnest on this thing. It just jumps from one to the other like nobody's business. So hit some twisties on the concrete, and you'll keep up with anything out there. Like I said, very linear power band, exits corners like an absolute animal. What would I change? One, got to get rid of these Mickey Mouse looking mirrors. Something a little more lower profile would be great. The license plate turn signal situation down there, it has the biggest license plate turn signal carrier I've ever seen in my life. I would definitely relocate that up underneath the tail here. One of the things I couldn't change, but I want to touch on, is this gas tank. It's very interesting how they have it. It starts about right here, and the gas tank actually goes all the way back into the tail. So it's centrally located, which probably helps with the balance and kind of the flickability of the bike. But when you're filling this is kind of weird. You think you're filled up, and you're not. So when you fill this bike up, give it a second, and then slowly fill it. You can put about another gallon in this once you think you've actually filled it up. So I can't change that, but it's something that I wasn't really stoked on. The other thing is, this engine sounds real nice, especially, like I said, when it sweeps past that 6 grand mark and really starts working. It sounds great. I'd love to put a full exhaust on this and a tuner. I know my guys over there at SNS, they've done a ton of development work, obviously, on the FTR750. I gotta believe they're gonna come out with something cool for this. So put a little bit more aggressive set of foot pegs on this, full exhaust, change the mirrors, tuck this license plate up underneath here, and have a great time. I can't wait to get more miles on this bike. And if you want to see more about this, check out our videos where we take this bike on a 3,000 mile round trip from South Dakota to Mexico and back. As always, if you like what you see here, tell your friends. Please subscribe to us and go ride those motorcycles.